let's begin with what you're currently doing, and that is Catalyst marketing. So
Yeah.
you're a year in to Catalyst,
Yep. A
um,
year this month.
a year this month, and the hustle's real. The
It
grind.
it is real. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody thinks that, being an entrepreneur, starting your own business is glamorous. And certainly, I mean, it's awesome. But yeah, there's a lot of hard work and a lot of hustle, but that's part of why you do it, I think.
Yeah,
So
awesome. So in your own words, I'd love to get in your own words, what services does Catalyst provide, and to whom?
yeah. So Catalyst is a digital marketing agency, and we really have niched into social media advertising, and even within that, primarily on the Meta platform. And so we provide those services, social media ads, to high ticket local businesses. And when I say local, I don't mean just local to me, but businesses that serve in their market is local. And so, our primary clients are home services, right? Roofers, deck builders, HVAC, people like that. Professional services, lawyers, accountants, coaches, therapists, and body services, orthodontists, dentists, med spas, people like that. So we do social media advertising for those kinds of businesses in their local communities.
Awesome, man. And we're going to definitely dig in. The topics that we're going to cover today are going to be entrepreneurship, marketing, and leadership. So
Yeah.
we'll have plenty of time to dig in more. Another thing I wanted to highlight was your leadership experience. I know personally that you've been a leader for 10 plus years, but is it more than that? Is it 14 plus, 15 plus?
It's probably going on 20 now.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, probably in the mid 2000, right in
Yep.
there. So approaching 20 years of
Amazing.
leadership roles in some form or another, whether the teams were big or small, or the
Mhm.
organizations were big or small. Yeah, a lot of organizational leadership background and experience.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to digging into that for sure.
Yeah.
Also, I wanted to let the audience know that you're a man's man. I mean, you're a
Well, thank
runner.
you.
You're into the Rocky Mountains as
Yeah.
often as you can. You backpack, you hike, you camp,
Yep.
and this is something that you wouldn't know by looking, but we're both in Denver. We're friends,
Right.
and we're real life buddies, right? It's
Right.
it's not we're not just Facebook connections or something, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that comes along with activities like we went snowshoeing, and
Yeah.
we rap about business regularly. Like
Right.
today, we literally just had a conversation about it
Yeah.
before we jumped onto the podcast. So tell me, like, give me a couple spots that you absolutely love to either go backpacking or taking the family. Like, where's your go-to spot here in Colorado?
Yeah. Well, and I should probably preface this by saying I don't like giving out my go-to spots publicly because
Okay.
Colorado is getting so overwhelmed right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I found a spot, I don't want anybody to know about it.
Fair.
Having said that, I mean, Colorado is a big state, and so there's a lot of great places to go. We actually get out to Wyoming quite a bit for family camping stuff because it is a little bit less crowded, a little more open. But we've done backpacking loops all over Colorado. And so some of my favorite places are definitely kind of in the southwestern part of the state, in the Sangre de Cristos and South San Juan. So out by the Ouray, Telluride area, there's some amazing places. So that's where we're hoping to get out a little bit this summer.
Yeah, I know. I know it's getting more and more scarce to find a really good spot. I know that we do a lot of just day hikes and
Yeah,
Saturday morning hikes with the family, and
right.
we found a couple of really cool spots. So I'd love to get your input on those day hikes at some point.
Yeah.
Um, I can always pick your brain off camera, right? Um,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We can't, put all this out there, and everybody that's watching or listening, next thing you know, we're going to have all the
yeah,
podcast audience there at the
yeah.
lake with us.
That's right. Like hitting you up on a Saturday morning. So I want to segue into our very first topic, and that's going to be entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And I want to start out talking about some of the common struggles of folks who are running an owner operated business.
Yeah.
And this weird paradox that people get caught into where they're owner operators. They've essentially bought themselves a job. They're working in the business and not on the business.
Yep.
And then I want to talk a little bit about how to exit. And what that really means. Not exit
Sure.
in the sense of startup, exiting where they get paid to leave, right?
Right.
But exiting as in that that evolution from owner operator to actual business owner.
Right.
Um, and I mean, I've been in the digital marketing space for 5 years now, running my shop.
Right.
And this is a struggle. Like even today, I'm still working on getting out, like
Yeah.
exiting, right? And figuring out ways that I can take processes and delegate them to other people and essentially buy back my time. So I'm going to give like three little steps. And then I
Yeah.
really want to get your input here, your experience running Catalyst marketing, where you are currently in your journey, sort of, and how far you've come in the last 12 months and like some
Yeah.
lessons in this subject. I would really
Sure.
love to get that. So here are the three things that I give people advice on. So number one, calculate your hourly rate. So take what you paid yourself in the last year, break it down, figure out your hourly rate. And then because you have 12 months of history, a person can go back and create an SOP, a standard operating procedure from what they've been doing in the last 12 months. And here's the deal. You've been doing it for 12 months. You're still alive as an owner operator,
Right.
which means that it worked in some way, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it needs some revision, but it worked. You're alive to tell the story. So with that SOP, you can then buy back your time by finding those $10 per hour jobs
Yep.
or processes in your company and hiring someone, for example, from Latin America to do that for 7, 8, 9, $10 an hour. And this is the part where people get stuck and they go, whoa, 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 that adds up to several hundred a week. And it's like,
Yep.
it doesn't, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. You can start with 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week,
Sure.
15, and just start building yourself up. And hiring someone like a virtual assistant can be a game changer because they don't need to be high level marketing, right? Or they don't need to be high level sales for you to start uh, offloading some of these processes.
Yep.
You can come in. That's the purpose of having that SOP is you hand this individual an SOP, whether it be here's my outreach strategy, or here's my billing process, or whatever it may be. They
Yep.
can run your email for you. They can run your social media for you. And again, you begin to buy back your time. And I think this is the very first step to graduate from owner operated to business owner,
Yep.
because you're not just buying back your time and buying back that dollar amount for cheaper. You're trading a dollar for two, right?
Yep.
But also now you have extra time that you can start working on these really important things
Yeah.
to grow your business. So I would love to get your input there. Again, love to hear like the journey in the last 12 months,
Yep.
a lesson learned maybe, or where you want to be in the next 12 months and how you think you want to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love talking about this topic, and I think you're right about sort of the what I call the owner operator myth, because there really is a difference between an owner in a true ownership sense and an operator in the business. And so for a lot of solopreneurs, they do fall into that owner operator category. And unfortunately, most people really don't have the skill set to do both well simultaneously. But when you're getting started, of course, you don't have a lot of options, right? So you're doing it all. And you're trying to, bootstrap the whole thing. And, you talked a minute ago about how people, they don't really own a business, they own a job. And it's really true. Like when you start a business, you're essentially trading, 40 hours of work for someone else for 60 or 70 or 80 hours of work for yourself. But that's just part of the hard work, I think, that goes into getting these things off the ground. I think, what you're talking about in terms of outsourcing, delegating, whatever terms, you want to use. I think it's so important. And because of my leadership experience, over the last 15 to 20 years, I came in with that mindset already. I knew that I wanted to own a business, but I did not want to be the only one doing the work on the business. And so I tried to build a structure very early on to where I could begin outsourcing some things, knowing that I would take a small financial hit, to be able to do that, but it would free up my time for other things. And And I think that's really what it is. It's not just a trade-off of dollars, right? Like if my time's worth $50 or $100 an hour and I'm trading that for $10 an hour to outsource it, that's one of the scales or the metrics you'd look at. I think another big one though really is trading low level, low impact work for higher level, higher impact work. So, 10 hours worth of admin types of things compared to 10 hours of thinking about the business strategically or client acquisition or those kind of things, the impact that makes on the business in the big picture is really different. And so it's something I came into, right away with. And that's the benefit I had probably of being in my mid 40s when I'm starting a business instead of, when you're 19 or 20 or 21, you just don't know these things. So that's what a little bit of age and gray hair will do for you. But yeah, I think it's so important for owners and entrepreneurs to be thinking about that, and that the sooner they can do it, the better. And I've heard it said that if somebody can do the job 75% as well as you should definitely hand it off. And from some leaders, they would even say if they can do it 50% as well, but they've got potential, they've got upside, you should be willing to hand that off to them. So I think when you look at it through those lenses, you can begin to delegate the things that you're either not as good at or don't have as high of leverage, or they just suck the energy out of you, and begin to move into a higher place in how you run your business.
Yeah, really good advice. I think where a lot of folks get caught up is also the mindset of being able to let go and get out of the way.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to a practitioner, like a person who's responsible for delivering. They don't want to screw things up, right? And they don't want the responsibility or the backlash, I guess is the better word, from their client saying, hey, this wasn't on time, or this isn't what I asked for. And yeah, like just the need for everything to be exactly right is actually a really great way to never grow.
Right. Yeah. Well, I've heard it said you can either have control or growth, but you can't have both. And so I think that's what you're talking about. You can control every little detail, but there's going to be a cap on how big your business can be that way.
Yeah. Within marketing agencies, marketing consulting, they say that the cobbler's kids have no shoes. And so, and the idea is it's that tunnel vision of let me work on my client stuff, and then you forget to take care of your own needs. And it's so funny. So I'll give you an example. Every few months, I try to run a LinkedIn event where you show up on the network and you deliver value, and you try to build goodwill with your network, and it works really well every single time. It gets a result every single time. And keyword here is I try to do this every every couple of months. If I were to just stop and give myself advice and say, okay, how often should I be doing this based on historical evidence? It should be every 30 days, but I don't do it every 30 days. I maybe do it every 3 or 4 months, like legit, right? And it's very inconsistent. Sometimes it's 3 months, sometimes it's like 5-6 months. And every time 3 months rolls by, I kick myself in the butt. And I'm like, why didn't I, do that again? And so that's where I'm currently at. And I'm thinking of ways to get online and sort of build goodwill with my audience that has less production involved. So it's just value right on the network. And so I think LinkedIn Lives is probably a good next step for me. And that allows me to sort of circumvent this cobbler's kids has no shoes, because I'm so focused on client work that I'm not taking care of my own lead generation. So this for me is like just smashing the time that it takes from, being on video to it actually being published. So we'll see how that goes. I'll have to let you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you're talking about, something that's super important. And I was in the same boat, right? Like my whole agency is focused on running ads on social media, which I've been doing for clients for the last year, but only in the last, 2 or 3 weeks did I start running ads for my own business on social media. So it's like, even though I do this day in and day out for other people, doing it for myself to promote and to grow my business is something that I waited too long to do. And I think this is a challenge though, but what you're describing is the owner operator thing, right? Like you get so focused on working in the business that you're not working on it. And I think what all of us know intuitively, but don't always put into practice, is that we actually should be working on the business a lot more than we are. And I don't know what the right ratio is of on it versus in it. It's different for different people and different industries and different places on your journey. But I would say most of us are in it too much and not working on it nearly enough.
Yeah. I want to segue right into our next topic, which is marketing. And
Yeah.
I think this is a really good segue. So I actually want to begin talking about the difference between ads and organic content. And I want to
Yeah.
define each one. And then I want to talk about the pros and the cons. And so
Sure.
I'd like to get your perspective on that first, and then
Yeah.
I'll kind of chime in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's probably a number of different ways to look at it. I would kind of segment it, with the following thoughts. Um, Generally, I think organic is going to your warm audience. Okay, organic is when you're posting on your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, whatever it is. Those are people who are already connected with you in some way, who are going to see that content. So by definition, that's already part of your warm audience because on some level they know you, they're following you, they like you. Whereas paid ads is something that's going to go out to a different audience, right? It's an audience that's not already connected with you. So that really is a cold audience, which is going to broaden your reach and all of that. Of course, paid ads you're paying for, organic is free. And from my perspective, there are not only pros and cons to each of those because they're going to accomplish different things. But I think in a perfect world, most business owners really should be doing both because they're going to hit a broader segment of their audience and people who are in different places in terms of their buyer journey.
Yeah, that's good. We just had a conversation about ads, and you gave me some advice on creating a system because I had no system.
Yep.
But we had an offline conversation just a couple weeks ago where you broke down a couple of things that I could be doing to build out an ad campaign. Just so the audience knows, I mean, I do organic content for my clients, and we're just now sort of rolling out the carpet, so to speak, for ads. And so we're doing a little bit of a beta test with one or two clients right now and seeing how it goes. But yeah, I'm about to dive into the ad space, specifically on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a really interesting journey. Again, I'll have to keep you updated. But one of the strategies that I know that I want to implement, I've seen this by a few other marketers that are way ahead of me in this in this journey, and that is they take organic content, something that's working, it's got lots of organic engagement, whether it be comments or shares or whatever it may be, and then they take that and then they use that in their creative.
Yep.
So if it's a video of a clip that came from a podcast, or a client interview or whatever it is, they turn that into a video ad, and then put paid dollars behind it, right?
Right.
And so the idea here is, I think it's really twofold. Number one, the copy or the creative is proven, it worked well from the organic side, and number two, it makes it an invisible marketing machine. Yep. And so it doesn't look like an ad. It looks like organic. And I think the reason that ads look like ads is because we spend time zooming in and making it salesy. Yeah. And what I've learned is that a part of our brain we know that intuitively when we see an ad, and we shut down. We go, marketing, right?
Yeah.
I'm being sold to, because we're sold to hundreds of times a day. And so the idea is to make it invisible, not make it look salesy, so that trigger doesn't go off and people can actually consume what it is that you're trying to advertise. A really, really simple example of this, and I mentioned this to you a few weeks ago as well. When you're driving along, you hit the stop sign, and you see over here in the grass a little yard sign, just those little guys, those little 10 by 7s or whatever they might be. And they're like handwritten, or
Right.
seemingly
Mm-hmm.
handwritten, little signs. And it's like junk removal or photography. Usually this, leaf removal. Like this is like,
Right.
and that is so good because number one, it doesn't look like sales. It looks organic. Like it's
Right.
like the version of organic versus paid, right?
Yep.
And it's like, hey, it doesn't send that signal off my head that it's advertising, and
Yeah.
so it just looks genuine, and I have this good feeling about that. Like, hey, if I
Yep.
hire these guys, I'm going to help out some good old boys, right? Some local businesses that are trying to. I mean, they're out here writing handwritten signs, for God's sakes. They must be good old boys, right?
Right. You got
And
cardboard and Sharpies,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah. It must be legit and
Right.
genuine. And so, unbeknownst to me, they got on, Vistaprint and
Yeah. They ran
printed
5,000
300.
of those.
Yeah, yeah. They printed 300 of those, and they're all over town. And they just chose font of handwritten in
Yeah.
Vistaprint. So,
Yeah.
but it's invisible marketing because it doesn't send off that signal in your head that
Yeah.
it's advertising. So I really love the idea of mixing organic and paid, and
Yeah.
and it's like rocket fuel. So I'm going to test it out. In 3 months, I'll have a better idea. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe I'm completely wrong, but this is the working theory so far.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, and we've seen some of that with some of our clients too, repackaging, their really successful organic content. And a tip for people who are watching who maybe want to dabble in this themselves, it can be as simple as just taking one of your posts that has done really well and just hitting the boost post button, and throw a little bit of money at it. It doesn't have to be this really polished ad. People can do that themselves in some cases. And so taking the stuff that has worked organically, again, with your warm market, people who already have some version of know, like, trust with you, can then translate really well, because then what you're doing is you're taking a proven thing and you're just expanding at the edges. And so I think that, expanding your market at the edges can be a lot more effective than just all of a sudden trying to drop into a cold market where you've got no traction whatsoever.
Next bullet point that I have here on my
Mm.
fancy notes is your target market. So I know that you already mentioned
Yeah.
this a little bit, but if we can kind of unpack that, I'd love
Yeah.
to hear your target market, who you're serving, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, our target market is small businesses, who serve their local community, city, area, whatever the region, and specifically in the high ticket space, right? We're probably not the best agency for somebody who's trying to push a $20 product, but for people who are doing high ticket, services or products, that's really kind of our specialty, and that's our niche. And I mentioned it before, home services, professional services, and body services are the three things that we do really, really well. And we've got great insight into that industry and those niches, and a lot of results to show for it. So that's kind of what we're focusing on. And I would dial into that even a little bit more and say this: our best clients are the ones who actually want to grow their businesses. And you'd think that would be obvious, like, well, every business wants to grow. But what I've discovered is not every business actually wants to grow. They might say they want to grow, they might have goals on the whiteboard or whatever, but to do what it takes to grow is a commitment from the owner or from the leadership of a small business. And so we're not the people who want to maintain status quo. We're the ones who want to take things to the next level. And so those are the businesses we like to work with, are the ones who are aggressive about growth.
Okay. Just for the audience, can you break down body work, or you say body shop? Is that,
Yeah, body
can you break that
services.
down?
So I
Body
would I
services.
think about that like anything that impacts the human body, right?
Okay.
So
Yep.
orthodontist,
Yep.
dentist, med spas are really big, and that's an industry that's really on the upswing. So those kinds of things that are sort of taking care of your body,
Sure.
we really love that space.
Fantastic. Love it. All right. So let's segue into our leadership topic, and this is where, like, you shine. Like, I've seen you in leadership, and I want to talk about a funny. I'll open this up with like a funny conversation that I had mentioned in our last coffee session,
Yeah,
right? And that
right.
was I came to you with two potential opportunities that I was going after in my agency, and in both situations or both scenarios, I was dealing with someone on their team who had what I believed to have had ego, right? Which is a problem for me. And I thought, as a marketer, I know that I need to know who's the decision maker within an organization, and that was pretty easy to identify in that case, in both cases. But it can get tricky if you stop there. And there's a bit of a blind spot. So what I really needed to do was identify who was the villain and the hero in that situation, right? And I was dealing with a villain in both cases. So
at least from your perspective, right?
Yeah, at least. I mean, exactly. Right. Yeah, they were terrible. No, I'm just kidding. So so it was this ego trip, and from what I could tell, it was the decision had to flow through them. They had to okay it. They felt like me coming in would have been stepping on their toes. It was just all around sort of. There's just a lot of rebuff, right? There's a lot of friction in the thing going well. While I had the decision maker, their boss, going green light, let's do this, right? And so I'm like, how do I massage the situation, right? So I came to you with that, and can you go ahead and just kind of repeat what it is that you shared with me in that meeting, because it was really, really helpful.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'll remember all the details and the nuances, but my perspective on leadership is, the older that I've gotten and the more experience that I've gotten, I think psychology and understanding the human condition is maybe one of the most important things in any kind of leadership, that emotional intelligence, right? To understand the people that you're dealing with and the situations you're navigating. And so the context of what we were talking about is my perspective. And this was just, my feedback based on what you told me. I was not in direct conversations with any of these players, but based on the way you described it, what I thought was happening, or at least a good starting point, working hypothesis, was that your direct contact, who maybe, the CEO or whatever might be the ultimate decision maker, but the person you're actually, working with, the marketing head or what have you, they may have not been as enthusiastic about you coming on as you would have wanted. And from my perspective, that probably had less to do with them being sort of, arrogant or know-it-all, or they don't want you stepping on their toes. It probably had more to do with a feeling of insecurity for them, because in their minds, or depending on their corporate, kind of climate, bringing in a consultant could feel like it's an indictment on the performance that they've had up to that point. It could feel like they have only had to do that because they weren't doing well on their own. And in one of the situations you described, it was almost as if the guy was sort of caught in the middle, because his boss was wanting to green light you coming in, and he didn't love that. And also the people on his team weren't giving him the results that he wanted. And so it was almost like the people above him weren't happy and the people below him weren't happy. And so that can create this sort of, cornered animal kind of scenario where in his mind, you're the villain, right? Because you're the one who's coming in and potentially raining on his parade, or you're coming in as the hero when he was trying to be the hero. And so understanding that and the mindset of a person in that situation, I think, can just help in terms of how you're going to approach it and how you couch things, how you frame things with them. And, we actually hadn't had a chance to follow up. So I don't know if my advice was any good or if it was helpful in that situation. But that was just kind of the 30,000 foot view that I gave you in that conversation.
Yeah, actually, and I had taken action on that the same day that we spoke. So within an hour, I had contacted both teams and just gave them advice that was like, hey, I'm going to come in and help kind of champion what you're already doing versus coming in to be the expert. Right.
And I think that was something we talked about. My advice was, if you go in and you become this guy's, you're there to make him successful, then he doesn't feel threatened by you. So.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So 50% close rate. So I closed one. Okay. One is still pending.
Well,
Um,
but you haven't lost them. That's good.
yeah, haven't lost them. Yeah, it wasn't a no. So
Right.
it was great it was great advice. And I'm glad that I was able to give you the feedback because
Yeah.
I had completely forgot to circle back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really really interesting. Because I played right into his hands. It was almost like
Yeah.
you know lizard brain against lizard brain, you know?
Right.
And and I think in our meeting when you had shared the advice with me, I thought, man, yeah, I played right into his hands. If I were just a little more compassionate, or what was the word I
Yeah.
used? I said
Empathy.
rapport, empathy. Yeah. If I
Yeah.
just had shown a little empathy instead of just pushing my own agenda, like, bro, you're just dragging your feet. Let's just close this thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, if I had shown a little more empathy, this could have went well much sooner.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it would have been a win-win, you know?
Yeah.
So good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Do you have, do you have, kind of a framework or anything that you use when dealing with people in organizations?
I think, and you talked about it, and you're right. Like it is easier for an outside person like me in this situation to give input, kind of from a removed position. I get the 10-minute, kind of download from you, and then I'm able to speak into it. And because I'm not emotionally involved or connected to it. I think it's really, you hear that and you see it and you're like, oh yeah, sure, this totally makes sense. But when you're in it, you don't always. And so I'm guilty of that just as much as anybody. I'm trying to train myself to default to empathy in those kind of situations when I'm trying to understand why is there a challenge with this person. My natural tendency is to drive and take action and to push and all of those things. And it's like, man, if you're if you're in the way, I'm going to roll over you, right? But I'm trying to train myself to default to empathy because in so many cases, and I nothing's 100%, but I think in most cases, if you can appeal to that person on a more emotional, empathetic level, find out what the challenges are and why they're maybe being, resistant or hesitant or whatever. If you can connect with them on that level, I think you can see stuff move forward so much easier and faster. And I actually would say faster from the standpoint that it could take a little more time on the front end. But because when you take that approach, you develop more trust with them, which then means things move faster down the road. And so I think it's well worth the time and energy to build that rapport early on because then you're able to hit the gas and accelerate a lot better. Um, that's not a framework. That's just a default that I'm trying to train myself in. I don't think most leaders are good at that, most entrepreneurs, because we are action oriented. So I think that is a retraining that we have to do. But in terms of framework, from a leadership perspective, I always try to think people first, right? It's easy to focus on product if you're in product or service kind of business. It's obviously easy to focus on process, especially if you're organizationally minded. Those things are important. Product and processes are both important. In my experience, if you get the people thing right, the products and the processes tend to take care of themselves a lot easier. Whereas no amount of great product or process makes up for bad people. So I always try to focus on people first.
Amazing. Yeah. I heard, I heard somebody say it wasn't like a fancy Ford quote or anything like that, but it was, somebody had said, on a podcast once, I think I heard, he said something to the effect of, unless you have a product that you can set on the shelf, you always have a people problem.
Yeah.
It's not a product or service or process problem. It's always a
Yep.
people problem.
Yep.
So pretty good advice.
Well, and I agree with that, but I would add another layer to it. You
Yep.
probably won't have a great product if you don't have great people in the first place,
Yep.
or your product won't keep up with the market over a longer period of time. So even in that scenario, I think that's still maybe short-lived,
Yep.
that product on the shelf will outscore your people problems. At the end, I heard somebody say, and I was probably a teenager when I heard this, and it's really stuck with me. He said, whatever business you're in the people business. And I've just had to come back to that over and over again. No matter what, I'm doing career wise, I'm always in the people business.
That's good. That's really good, man.
Yeah.
I want to get, I know you probably have a lot of things to share here, but what I would love to get toward the end of the podcast is maybe some books that you would
Yeah.
recommend
Sure.
on leadership, people
Yep.
and leadership in general, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, so wanted to take a second to like give you like a shameless plug, and that is I want people to know about Catalyst Marketing.
Yeah.
I want them to know. We've already talked about your audience and your
Yep.
services, but I want them to know that they can go to Catalyst Marketing and they can learn a lot more about your services there. Wanted to sort of speak into the future for a
Yep.
second and say, if someone were wanting to get in touch with you for executive coaching or leadership
Yeah.
coaching and go deeper with you on this people conversation, for
Yeah.
example, what's a good place for them to start? Let's say they opened up a conversation with you. What's that first conversation going to look like?
Yeah. I think the first conversation is really trying to assess um, where are things at for that leader that I'm talking to for their business or their organization? Where are the challenges, the pain points, what's going well, what's not going well? I think about some of those consulting conversations as almost like a first date, right? Like you're feeling each other out a little bit. Like, do we want to go out again? The purpose of the first date is to decide if you want a second date. And so I think, those conversations are similar. From my perspective, I think sometimes people get a little bit leery of, coaches and consultants on a couple levels. One, sometimes they don't want to be told what to do. And, who does, right? Nobody enjoys that. But two, sometimes people fall into this trap of thinking, unless this person has worked in this specific industry or something like that, their input or their advice won't be relevant or effective. And I think that's a huge myth. Um, there's sort of this myth of specialness, and I have to kind of burst the bubble for people a lot of times and just tell them, like, you're actually not that special, and your business is not that special, and your problem is not that special. We think it is because we're very myopic, but in reality, most business and leadership and organizational problems are very similar, regardless of the size of the business, industry that they're in, personalities, all of that. Yes, there's some nuances, but in a lot of cases, these things are higher level challenges. And so that's always what I'm trying to ascertain is what's really going on sort of outside of the details, right? Because I think I'm able to speak into those things. So those first conversations, I think, are really dealing with some of that and trying to help people understand that, number one, your problem is not that special, but that's not a slam. That should actually encourage you, because it means there's other people who have experienced what you're experiencing and have found a way to rise above it.
Excellent, man. It's good stuff. Really good stuff. I can tell you're passionate about it and that this is like tip of the iceberg for you.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to get into more conversations about it for sure.
Yeah, man.
So it's like, outside perspective, right? And helping people understand they have blind spots. And definitely.
And I think sometimes, it's like any coach, right? A coach just sees things that you don't see when you're in the game because they're not there in the game. And I think it's so valuable, right? And we all know this, the athletes are the quintessential example. Like every high level athlete has a coach. And the reason why is because they can see things that the player doesn't see. And I just think it's invaluable no matter where you're at in your journey.
Yeah. A perfect segue right now would be going into a book that actually you recommended to me. So I want to talk about books for a second, because I think this is one of the most valuable part of the podcast is resources. And back in the day, we used to have mentors. That's barely a thing now. But now we can read books or listen to books, consume knowledge from these people. And so you gave this recommendation to me. It was at least 3 years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And that was Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. And that's such a good book. I moved milestones after reading that book. Everything from, it's in, let's say, it touches every part of your life. It's like the spiritual,
Yep.
the financial, the business, the family, it touches every part of the life, right?
Yeah.
Um, and one thing that I sort of gleaned from that was we blame so much on external factors that we have
Yeah.
zero control over, which is just
Hmm.
dumb, right?
Right.
But we blame the external factors that
Yeah.
we don't have any control over, and we rarely look internally, which is where we do have control.
Yeah.
Complete. Only, in fact, sometimes it's the only thing we have control over
Yep.
is ourselves. And so that was something that I had gleaned from that. And I think particularly in business, the reality is that nobody's coming to rescue you, right?
Yeah.
No one's coming
Right.
to rescue you. And so if you want to get there, well, you're the pilot, right? There
Yeah.
is no co-pilot. And
Yeah.
so if you want to get there, you have to get there. And you're the one that has to fuel the plane and, service the runway and check the motors and
Yeah.
actually get going. And if that requires getting a pilot's license first, fine, go get a pilot's license.
Yep.
But whatever it takes. And so the reality that nobody's going to show up and rescue you. No one's going to get you out of your debt. No one's going to no one's going to come in and I've heard people say no one's going to do your push-ups for you. Pretty funny.
Right.
And so you can't hire anybody to do your push-ups.
Right.
Yeah. So on the topic of outsourcing,
Right.
you can't do that.
Yeah.
Let me know when you do. But yeah, that one, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. That's a good one. So I'd like to get a couple books from you, what you've read in the past, maybe what you're reading right now.
Yeah. And there's so many, and I'm sure if I were looking at my bookshelf, I'd probably be able to pick out a couple titles, but a few that maybe are germane to this conversation. One would be Thanks for the Feedback. Probably one of the best books I've ever read for personal development and for team development, because so many of us do have blind spots and we actually need feedback from other people. And yet our natural tendency is to be so defensive about the feedback that we're getting, whether it's direct or indirect feedback, and not recognizing that feedback is all around us, right? Your partner is giving you feedback, sometimes wanted, sometimes unwanted. The market is giving you feedback. If you are a business owner, you ask a girl out on a date and she says no, that's actually feedback. I mean, everything is feedback if we learn to look at it that way and embrace it, because it can make us better. And so that helped me tremendously personally in personal relationships and in professional relationships. So that's one of the ones on the top of my list. Another couple that actually you turned me on to, Alex Hormozy. I started in this journey, $100 million offers and $100 million leads. I read them. I'm listening to them again now. And there's something about the way that Hormozy phrases things and the way his brain works about these things that I think is invaluable in our generation of entrepreneurs. And so can't recommend those highly enough. Another one that comes to mind, some of the stuff that I've been reading a little bit more recently. Well, this one's not recent for me, but I've read it several times. Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud. He talks about the idea that in life, whether it's in personal relationships or business or whatever, we like starting things. We don't like ending things. There seems sometimes like a resignation of failure if we have to end something, end a business, cut a department, cut a service, end a relationship. And yet it's actually the ending of things that allows us to grow. And he uses the analogy of, a gardener tending a rose bush. Like, you've got to prune out the branches, obviously, that are dead, but the ones that maybe are diseased and they're not going to get better, or just the ones that even if they're healthy, they're not in line with your vision for the rose bush, right? And so that book has helped me tremendously in different facets of life. And trying to think, what I'm reading right now is slightly off topic, but it's super helpful. Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess by Dr. Caroline Leaf. It's about really putting good practices in for mental health. And with some of the challenges and transitions that I've been through personally over the last few years, I would not have described myself as somebody who had like mental health problems. But sometimes you go through tough stuff, and it's easy to fall into kind of rumination or overthinking or some toxic thought patterns. And so that's been really helpful for me to learn how to retrain my brain, the difference between the mind and the brain, minds can actually heal our brains and think new thoughts and neuroplasticity. And it's a little bit scientific, but a really great book. So, so I don't know. There's a few for you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I don't know about you, but I just love reading. It's probably the quickest way to get the download on just people that have, that are ahead of us in
Absolutely.
life. Right. And, man, I would love to see more of the, more of that model happening. I'd love to see more people meeting in coffee shops and that whole mentor model, right?
Yeah.
I think it's something that we're kind of missing in the last 5 years. I've noticed. Probably the pandemic had a big part of that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to meet and have their face covered, and
right.
So yeah, that's something that's pretty amazing when it comes to books. So one that I'm reading, I just finished reading actually. It's called The God I Never Knew by Robert Morris. Have you heard of this?
Yep, I've read that. Yep.
Okay, awesome. It's all about friendship with the Holy Spirit, and I'm gonna tell you, it's absolutely easily the number one, spiritual book that I've ever read.
Wow.
Easily. Just because the impact that it's had on life. And again, it's impacted, business and family and relationships. And, just, my relationship with my daughter, with my wife, it's been tremendous. And so it was so funny because, it seemed like it took so long to get through the book, but then I'm like, it's over. Right.
Right.
Like, it was so
Where's
good.
Part 2?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where's the updated version?
Yeah.
Not like the Holy Spirit's going to change, but maybe some new insights.
Yeah.
In 2024. I don't know.
Sure.
But actually, it's so funny. I'm about to start this one now. The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. I have it stuck in my backpack for an occasion such as this. But no, I'm looking forward to it. It was recommended by a buddy of mine that runs a marketing agency, and he said that everybody just pulls from this book, all the good stuff, all the stuff that's based on marketing and funnels and machines, right? It's all coming from this book. He said, this is the classic. This is the OG, I guess. I've not read anything by Chet Holmes, but
I haven't either.
This will be it. So I'll have to give you some of the golden nuggets from that.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome, man. Well, let's wrap up here. What I'd love to do is just let the audience know where they can find you, online, offline, wherever it may be.
Yeah.
Don't give out your phone number, but
right. My address. Stop by. Come see me. Yeah. So website is catalystmarketing.co. That's CO. Catalystmarketing.co. You can go there and get a little bit of a glimpse in terms of what we do for our marketing clients, and there's links there to schedule a call. If you want to kind of have a strategy session, all totally free, of course. See if there's anything we can do to help you if you are a business owner and you want to explore some digital marketing stuff. In terms of connecting with me, maybe a little bit more directly, the handle is the Matt Ware. On all of the social channels, on Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn and all of that. So at the Matt Ware.
Awesome. And I'll go ahead and put that in any of the show notes or descriptions on the videos that we post.
Great.
So they can get that and find you. Awesome, man. Anything else that you want to, any questions, comments, anything that you wanted to cover before we wrap up here?
No, I'm grateful to be able to do this with you. Of course, you and I do this, all the time offline without a camera rolling, and we probably ought to start recording some of our calls or our coffee meetings, because we could repurpose those into content that probably people would find valuable. But no, I just love getting a chance to talk to you, and appreciate you bringing me on today.
Yeah, man, it's been a lot of fun, and definitely there's going to be another. Like I said, we're going to try to do this again in person, and get fancy mics and all that stuff. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
For sure.
All right, bro. Well, we'll holler, man, and we'll talk real soon.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, Evan.
All right, later, buddy.